Well, it is time to work on this gorgeous freaking bike. Now, like many of the bikes we get in, this bike has a story. So let's talk about it. So this is a 1971 Honda CB750. It's a K1, and this is in a beautiful candy gold metallic. So this bike is special because it is a one owner, and we are bringing it back to life. So the story of this bike is that it belonged to a gentleman who actually worked for NASA and who bought it new and really enjoyed it in his free time. So the bike's current owner is his daughter, and she has commissioned me, and Seth, of course, to bring this thing back to life, and she's gonna ride it, which is really awesome. So she rides a lot of bikes, and you guys are probably gonna see this, hopefully, at Barber Vintage Fest. That would be my goal. That's her goal, is to ride it there. But yeah, she rode this when she was young, and it's just really cool. So the gentleman who owned it, like I said, he worked at NASA. He worked on the shuttle programs, and I'm gonna put up a few photos now of him on the bike. But I'm just really honored to get to do this stuff. So, you know, it's like an heirloom, and you know, those kind of things are important to me. So what we're gonna be doing, going through the basic systems on this, it should actually run already. So this one should be easy, knock on wood. But we're gonna make sure it's roadworthy. So we're probably gonna end up going through the brake caliper, probably cleaning the master. It doesn't feel seized up or anything like that. The fluid looks decent enough. Doing the timing, going through the carburetors, that kind of thing. So we're gonna go ahead and get started by just kind of giving it a once over. Bouncy, 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 bouncy. Now, it's really awesome getting to have a K1 in the shop. This is one of the earlier bikes that we've actually had in here as far as CB750s are concerned. And I love, you know, some of the smaller details, you know, the differences in the years. So we still have, you know, our round top carbs, things like that. A lot of this is very similar to, say, my K5. But the most obvious change is going to be the ears for the headlight, as well as the headlight bucket being painted in the, you know, in the tank color. These have a smaller reflector on them. These look so much better. And some things between my, let's say my K5 would be the triple up here. So the earlier triples from like 72 or 73 down, they had this kind of horn on them right here, and they held the gauges in with a bracket like that. So the gauges are earlier. They look really good. But these triples are known as like the unicorn ones because they break so often, and unfortunately that is the case for this one. So if you look right there, you can see the crack on that. And you might also notice there's no spacer in this. So that was a common issue. People forgot the spacer. You go to tighten that ear and it actually cracks the triples. So fortunately, recently, they actually started making a reproduction of this. It's high quality. So we're gonna go ahead and get one of those on order. It's from CMS&L, so not sponsored, but you guys should totally think about maybe sponsoring me. I shout you out a lot. But anyway, we were still rocking, you know, a twin strut fender here. Caliper's pretty similar to up through like K5 and stuff. This one does, after having a friend stop by who saw this bike in another video, he was pointing out that these HM300s are actually a reproduction. So I'm gonna zoom in over here. You can see those stampings. So apparently if they have a stamping, which these do, that means they are an NOS bought back in the day, which is pretty cool, but they're in fantastic shape. So the owner, they do have the side covers, they're just back at home. The seat has been either recovered or it's just an entire new seat. It might just be an entire new seat. But with the earlier bikes, you get, it's like a slightly smaller taillight, looks a lot better. This one does not have the grab bar that goes over top, just has the grab bar to get it on the center stand, which is cool. And overall, it's just a really, really awesome bike. So it's original paint. They have cleaned the inside of the tank, and so that's ready to go. But this candy gold metallic is just growing on me so hard. In this moment right here, it almost looks like cat yellow that's just like a little bit more shiny. But you can't really see it. It's got a lot of metallic in it, so out in the sun it looks fantastic. And of course, it just makes us want to get our candy gold metallic 750 going even more. So an immediate difference I'm seeing, the size of these flow pole drain screws are way smaller than most of the other ones. Not bad. Sweet. It's old, but you know, probably totally usable, but we can go ahead and just replace it anyway. But yeah, it'll give us a chance. We can clean the inside of the airbox. So of course, we're gonna do an oil change. They also provided an oil pressure gauge like mine, so we'll go ahead and install one there. And then actually we're gonna be converting this into electronic ignition as well. So that'll be cool. This is like a knockoff Dynatech.
Not as cool.
We'll see if it worked well. All right, so Seth and I have been kind of going through this thing, so tell us what you're seeing.
A couple of small things, nothing crazy, but like here, for example, there is some dried remnants of brake fluid, which could indicate maybe a little bit of seepage in the master cylinder. So at the very least, got to take it apart, clean it, make sure everything's good to go in there, probably put new seals in it.
Yeah.
The
normal thing.
Float here, the pin was stuck for the at the tip of the needle there, or the base, I guess, was stuck all the way out, and it was not actuating properly. But massaged it a little, it came around, but it probably wouldn't hurt just to go through and double check things and make sure they're not frozen.
One thing I did notice, so the manifold here, even though it's the correct one, it's not clocked the right way. And you can see it's not fully seated on the actual intake of the head. So the carbs are kind of loose. So we're gonna go ahead and pull those off. I'm gonna run those through the tank. We'll reposition all of the actual manifolds and just kind of make sure they're all on there as tight as they should be, you know.
And as you come up to the horn, you'll see there's a couple of wires and an electrical tape tumor.
It's not a tumor. It's not a tumor at all.
Which usually indicates some previous repair work or additions were made, so it'd be nice to dig into that a little and see what's going on.
I have not heard electrical tape tumor until just now.
I just made it up.
Okay, that's going on a t-shirt. So the headlight bucket is cracked on both sides. Now, this is gonna be a tough one. Is it worth trying to undo this and repair it, or do we just leave it how it is? I wouldn't mind putting like some fiberglass on the back side of that just to kind of preserve it. But we also run the risk of making it worse by trying to undo it. So that's something we gotta consider. Now the caliper, it does have some spray paint on it. We are gonna go through this, but I do worry that I will remove that spray paint by going through the tank. And this is one of those things, like if it's your dad's bike, you know, if that's something he did, he put some paint on it, do you wanna retain that or not? So that's kind of the stuff I wanna think about here. But we're gonna pull the tank off. We're gonna go ahead and measure the coil resistances and stuff. I'm gonna make sure that we disconnect everything on the harness. We're gonna go through and clean all of the terminals, check grounds, that kind of thing. So all normal stuff. Anything else on the list?
I mean, there's plenty on the list, but.
Yeah, we have a to-do list. So, okay, we're gonna get to it. Yeah, that's to be expected.
Yeah.
The intake manifolds are kind of throwing me for a loop. So obviously they have a number on them like they all would, the 1, 2, 3, and 4. When this bike came in, they were basically flipped backwards. They're all over the place. So 1 and 4 seem to fit okay. That has the correct lip where it needs to. But 2 and 3, it's almost like they are a duplicate of 1 and 4. So obviously you want the number pointing up. If you have the 3 pointing up, it's backwards, unless you flip it on this side, then which it's backwards again. So it only fits if it's 2 side up, and even then, 2 and 3 are really close together. So these do have a part number on them, the Honda number, but being very soft. Like, do you guys think that these are, I don't know, cheap aftermarkets? These are just throwing me for a loop. What do you guys think? So one thing you always do, or we always do, is check the primary and secondary resistance on the coils. That way we can isolate if there's an issue with, you know, a plug cap or something like that, because most of the time what I find is the original plug caps go bad. They're a 5K ohm resistor. You can see right here. Now these have been replaced. They are a more modern NGK, which is good. But I do highlight how to do all of this in another video. I'll link in the description. So what are you checking right now?
Now I'm checking the secondary resistance, noting to remove the plug cap so that it doesn't throw off the reading.
Yeah.
But we're looking for around 15,000 ohms.
So you just clip the end off of this. Do you need me to just hold it?
That would be awesome.
I got my left hand over here. There you go. 14.2, so you're right in that range, plus or minus 10%.
So these coils are both pretty much in that same range, which is good.
Okay. And then, you know, also they measured good on primary resistance, which is the actual wiring harness leads, correct?
Yeah, the smaller wires coming out of the coil.
Yeah, the actual wires over here, so measuring that. So these are good to go. Okay, we have the master cylinder super clean, and it is time to assemble. So we have the new kit here. We have a little bit of grease, and we're gonna get this together right now. Okay, first up, I'm gonna go ahead and put this little dealy-ma-bob on the end of this spring. Well, I didn't mean to drop it in, but it was gonna be the first thing to go in anyway. And I'll get the lip side. The lip side is facing down, and this is definitely where dental picks come in handy. Over the main plunger. Okay, that is in there. Now it starts getting a little trickier. Okay. we have our C-clip. I can leave this wedged in here. So these dudes right here are the most handy pliers specifically for this job. I will put a link in the description for them. But this is what makes this job tolerable. Set that in there. Reposition. There we go. Okay, moves fluidly, feels good. Now we can put a little dust cap on. And finally, this little dude. Okay. Good as new. So one trick I'm going to try here is to basically break that surface tension by compressing the piston inward. And then it may slide out easier. There it goes. As I worked to clean the caliper halves in the ultrasonic cleaner, it did end up removing that silver paint that was on the caliper, and underneath, the original black paint wasn't in the greatest shape. So I decided to go ahead and strip the paint so we can repaint it and have a really nice looking part when we're done. All right, the newest shipment of parts for the 750 has just arrived, and I'm pretty excited about this one. So obviously we have that cracked top triple. This is a replacement. Now, these factory ones that have the gauge mounts built into them, they're kind of known as the unicorn triple, and they're very expensive if you find one online. But this is kind of new to the market, at least from what I've seen. It is a reproduction version. And I get this, this is the first one I've tried. This is from CMS&L, not sponsored by them, but again, if you guys are listening, hit your boy up, come on. Ooh. Got a little nick in the paint up top here. That's okay. Better than this thing being cracked. But overall, it looks like a pretty nice part, so I'm excited to get this thing swapped out.
Finesse it around wiring harness.
I guess I'm gonna have to unplug them from the headlight, which I didn't think about. Okay, take two. We got the wiring disconnected now. It's a little precarious. So I guess now you could just go back. That would have made this much easier. I would have thought to do that in the beginning.
Hindsight's 2015 or something.
Yeah, I think so. Now, moving on to these actual bar clamps, there is a specific detail that you need to pay attention to here. So looking at it from the side, there's always one side that's taller than the other. Okay, and it's actually also like this for your fork clamps. So you'll notice on this one there is a teeny tiny little dot at the end of this. This one's a slightly different position, but there is still a mark. So what you do is these are actually the leading edge, so they go to the front, and then you tighten these down, and then you actually start bringing the rear down to the actual clamping pressure. So yeah, you run your bolt in on the front, that'll be tight, and then you start bringing the rear down to secure the clamp. The more you know. So here I'm experimenting with restoring the finish on these bar clamps. On the left, I have used a ceramic coating to basically clean it and give it a little bit of shine, and on the right is untouched. Now in this next trial, the one on the left is using a polishing compound, and the one on the right is just using the ceramic coating. Overall, the polish worked really well and created a great finish, so it doesn't look so out of place on a brand new triple clamp. And of course, the most important piece that caused all of this, the little D spacer. That little spacer prevents you from over tightening it and putting too much tension on these two little ears, which is why it cracks right there, or there. And among other bits that I got, so I got some OEM carburetor slide adjuster boots. So these things usually crack and come apart, so there's remnants of one here, and then I can feel this one's torn up and stuff. So I'm going to split the rack because I'm going to replace the transfer tube O-rings. So there's two here, two there, and two there. And so while this is apart, you know, that means I have to remove the lifts for the slides, and that's the best time to replace these. So, you know, while you're in there, it's a lot of labor to do just that. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and rip these things apart and get them back together pretty quick. They should be relatively clean inside, but we're just gonna go ahead and run them to the ultrasonic, and it will be that much better. Ow! Now, I do have a full carburetor rebuild video that focuses around these CB750 carbs, so I will have that linked in the description, as well as a card right here, right now. So anyway, I'm gonna set this thing on time lapse. We're gonna fast forward getting these things down to the individual bodies. So from there, I can go ahead and replace the fuel T O-rings and then the little hats right there. So let's get to it. Overall, the carbs really aren't that bad. They definitely need a little cleaning to them, but I've definitely had a lot worse. So hopefully you guys are gonna be able to see this. See that number 2? So each individual carb body is numbered 1 through 4, which is exactly what I do. So normally I do like I'll do a center punch and just do 1 to 4 dots. So that's cool. And then the fuel T's, these O-rings right here. So I see these leak a lot, so that is what these guys are for. Replacing them with Viton as well. Okay, we are ready to start going back together. All of the bodies are clean. I don't know if you guys could hear in another clip, but all of that staining right there, they're a little dark. I feel like these things might have been cleaned in like simple green in the past, because that can and will discolor it. So just an observation. You can see the difference there. But yeah, ready to go back together. One last thing before we do though is I will fill these things up. I'm going to check these pedestals for vertical cracks, because that will cause a fuel leak that you will never figure out. I mentioned I want to check the overflow tubes here for cracks. What happens is they can crack vertically. And the way this will present itself will be a leak through your overflow, and it'll look like your float needle is stuck or something. So it gets misdiagnosed quite often, and it's a leak you really can't stop unless you repair this. So the way we test it though, make sure we have the drain screw in, fill it with water as high as you can. I'm going to cap this end and I'm going to blow into this end. So that one's good. Now, because I've already recorded this without the microphone attached, I know that this one has a leak. So let me demonstrate. So I hope you guys can see that, but it's forcing bubbles up from the bottom here. So we are going to go ahead and probably just use a little bit of JB Marine to clean that up, and it'll be fine. Well, we were going together and everything was going great until it wasn't going great. So I went to install the pilot right here. Started going in, it just got a little tight and then it just went crunch and it actually broke the end of the pilot off. So unfortunately there is some pilot in that hole, which sucks. So I've never had to try to extract one of these things. So we're gonna figure this one out. I think what I'm gonna do is actually just start with the tiniest left-handed drill bit I have. The piece that's in there shouldn't have any threads holding it in, but it is distorted, so it's probably mushroomed into the side of the bore. I've never had this happen. I don't know how it happened, but that's how I'm gonna start off. Okay, I've got it kind of like pushed in. It's caught, at least on the rest of that jet. I'm gonna try to just kind of pull it out if I can keep the camera on it. Dang, that did not work. Keep trying. Okay, I just drilled in. I got through it. You can see the remnants there. So I just got a little bore in there by hand. So now, I guess I will just step this up a little bit. That was the 16th inch. We'll try the 5/64. Sorry for the camera work on this. But that should get me really close to the OD. And the rest should fall out. I feel like it's caught and now it can pull out. Nope. I think it did actually start coming out. I think so. Success. Caught and just barely started spinning. I was able to work it out. Man, I have never had that happen before. That is so weird. But we're good, no damage. I was up here, guys. I was up here. I was feeling taller than I normally am, which is not saying much. But I removed that little piece there, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just replace all of the pilots for a consistent one because they were unmarked. So got these two done, went to unthread the third one, and it broke off. So here we are again.
A few moments later.
We're back up here. It's feeling good. The air's crisp.
Just went ahead and pulled the plunger out of the housing and cleaned it up, made sure there wasn't anything in the bore and that everything's moving nice and freely, which it is. So, push it down all the way, make it easier to install and not install it upside down. And I have already rotated the engine to the correct position for installing this, which on this particular engine is about 15 degrees past top dead center for number one. Just make sure these are tight. And we will undo this and let it spring forward, just like that. And now there should be the correct amount of tension on the tensioner. Tighten that back into place and the jam nut. All right. Next, valves.
Okay, we're getting ready to put the carburetors back on the actual bike. And before we had an issue with the intake manifolds. So per some digging, it seems like there is a common brand. I think these look like the ones that you find on eBay. They have a 1, 2, 3, 4 number. And they also have the number of the 16, you're not gonna be able to see it, but they actually have the part number, like the factory OE Honda number on them. But 2 and 3 are the exact same as 1 and 4. So they do not work. Now, these came from 4 to 1. They are not expensive. You can still get the original Honda ones, and that's great. Sometimes I do want to do that, but for sake of science, I went ahead and got the ones from 4-in-1, and these things are actually perfect. So they are not quite aesthetically just like the factory ones, but they do fit. They're not numbered 1 through 4, but you can figure it out. You can make it work. You just line them up on your bench. So yeah, people have had good luck with these things, and we're gonna go ahead and use them. So I'm gonna go ahead and get them on the engine now. But just so you know, the 4-in-1 ones are good. Okay, it is time to put the airbox on. These particular airboxes have got to be the easiest ones to put on out of all of the motorcycles I've worked on. So it's pretty awesome that it comes off into 2 pieces. You just put one half up here. And rotate it up.
Crunchy tape, survey says. Ouch. Yeah, not great. See if we have another one of those.
So we need to clean the wiring on this horn. I can't really add anything, so what we're going to be doing is using vinegar and salt to actually create a solution and get all of this cleaned up to bare copper, get all the corrosion off of it, and then we're going to neutralize it with baking soda and water. So I'm going to mix this up. Apparently it's about a cup of vinegar to a tablespoon of salt. We're just going to kind of guesstimate it. We'll put it in this little cup here, and I'll get the horn wiring down in there for about, I don't know, a few minutes, 5 minutes, something like that. And then we'll take it out and get it neutralized. And then we should be able to solder onto it after that. Okay, now if I can get this set in here and then held in place, that would be sweet. Okay, it's been a little over 5 minutes. Let's see what we got here. I definitely think it's an improvement. You can see the little green wire, it's pretty bright. So yes, I'm using a big socket, but I'm not using big pressure. Right there. All right, I got the fuel bottle hooked up. I'm going to go ahead and light this thing off, get some heat in it, and then we can work on, well, not yet, but I want to work on syncing the carbs, but I do want the air filter on it. So I'll have to put on the bottom of the airbox. Just been kind of holding off on that because I don't have my overflow tubes yet. Not that it's difficult to take on and off, whatever. And of course, this thing does have oil in it. You know, that's stuff I've checked. So I'm gonna run up, grab the keys because of course I forgot them. We'll do a little systems check. We'll light it off. All right, I've got neutral, left, right, low, high, off, horn, and it cranks. Okay, I'm gonna turn the fuel on. We might see a little bit of drippage at first. I see no drippage. Choke on, key on, ignition on. That seems down a hole. Seems like 1 and 2 had not fired yet, so maybe I just didn't have enough fuel in it. See if it wants fuel. Now, of course, we have not synced the carbs. I do not know the ignition timing on it because we are going to go ahead and do the electronic ignition. So there's a couple unknowns on this one that are definitely not set correctly. So you can expect it to run rough. Right now we're listening for engine noise, making sure it makes oil pressure, seeing if it smokes, which it does not. Seems like a good running bike. Well, I'd say that is mission success. Sounds good. It's off choke. Not one drop from the carburetors. We will revisit this thing tomorrow. We should be able to get our overflow tubes on, and then the bottom of the airbox. We'll sync the carbs, get the tank on it, and take it out to the great wide beyond, yonder, there, parking lot. And I don't know if we ever showed this, but Seth went through the wiring, remade a actual battery cable here, and then redid some of this. Some nice quality contacts. Okay guys, it's the next day. 750 is warmed up. I do have the lower half of the airbox and air filter on it. I just hooked up the vacuum gauges to this thing. I have not turned it on to see where they're at. I'm expecting them to be a little off, but nothing too drastic. This thing seems to run really good as it is. There's going to be a little bit of popping that you hear at idle. So that could be two things. It could just be mixed, and it could be the sync being off, or a combination of both. So we're going to be trying to address that. Now the gauges I'm using behind me, these are just some really cheap, really basic vacuum gauges. Now there are multiple versions of this same tool. Another popular option would be mercury gauges, and those have a column of mercury fluid in them, and the vacuum, you know, dictates the pulse and how high it is and stuff like that. I've used those. I didn't have very much luck with it, so I've been using these for a long time. So with these, you want to make sure that each gauge is basically calibrated to one cylinder. I use these all the time, so that's something I've already done. I'm not going to demonstrate it in this video, but that's something you definitely want to pay attention to. So anyway, these things are hooked up. Let's fire this thing up and see where we're at. I'm also going to get the fan going here. That's not too bad. So this one's not really bouncing. Just a wiggle. Okay. So I'm going to get to work by adjusting this one first. It will end up throwing off the rest of them, but that's where we got to start. So I could definitely hear the popping on cylinder 1. So we're going to see how close we can get this. We turn the big one. Hear how the idle picked up because it's smoother. Perfect. All right, so as of right now, I think it's a little slow coming back down to idle. That hangs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually richen up the mix. So these have an air screw on them instead of a fuel screw. So I'm actually going to be turning these clockwise, turning them in to richen it up, because it could be a lean hang. So with just that adjustment, you heard the idle climb. This is also in conjunction with an idle drop test. So the fact that the idle climb means it's more efficient and it's smoother, which is a good thing. So now we can bring it back down. That sounds perfect. With the bike warmed up and running well, our last step before going for a ride is changing the oil. The CB750 uses a dry sump system with an external oil tank to help keep the oil cooler, as well as keeping the engine as short as possible. After installing a new filter and pouring in some fresh oil, it's time to go for that ride. Well, it's time to go for a test ride. Breathe on the key. We gotta get some test miles in before the rain comes. So this is actually the first CB750 I've ridden with the HM300 pipes. The other ones I've had the 341s, and honestly these are a little bit louder and sound much better. Normally I am a 4-in-1 connoisseur, but gotta give credit where credit is due. This thing sounds pretty tough. This thing runs so good. It feels really healthy. Sounds so good. So I know this may just be another CB750 revival. You know, we've done more than a few at this point, but I just love these bikes, and you know, I think this bike is extra special because it has a story to tell, and I am really honored that I have people that trust me to work on their, you know, precious memories like this. So David, the original owner, got to have some adventures on this, was an accomplished individual, and I'm sure he inspired many. I'm just happy that I can get this bike back to his family and they can enjoy it, because I sure know what it's like to throw a leg over your late father's bike. It's a feeling, so I'm excited for them to experience that same feeling.